Oh yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, thanks again for having me, Milt. Yeah, this will be a lot of fun. Talk some Game of Thrones, and yeah, I do the Dawg Show, folks. I'm Dog Sidious. I do entertainment news, uh, live streams, and a little bit of gaming too. So, but great to be here again, and thanks for having me, Milt.
Great. And you probably had missed it, but yeah, I'm Milt, the Westerosi Ninja, and I was muted during the intro, so I apologize for that. I'm still getting over Alshon Jeffrey letting that ball go right through his hands into a Saints defensive back to ice the game for the Saints. So go Saints. You guys deserved it. And hopefully you'll make it to the Super Bowl in a few weeks. What you think, dog, about that drop?
That's rough. I mean, and I think you really brought that to light. I mean, I imagine he makes probably about $10 million a year, and to do that at on that stage at that moment, to just not give your championship team a chance. I'm not gonna, I can't totally blame the game on him, but you would have liked to have seen them get a better chance than what they got there at the end. So. But I guess hats off to the Eagles and to their fan base. I know they waited a long time for a championship, and they did get one. So the Saints are moving on, though.
Yeah. So I'm sure you guys weren't interested in our commentary of the Saints Eagles game, but you will be interested in our content tonight, which is basically our top five Game of Thrones characters, show only. Okay. Of all time. Our favorites, it doesn't mean objectively is the best characters or best written characters out there, but it's just our most favorite characters. And like every time we go on the stream, we're gonna have a little trivia slide for everybody about Game of Thrones. So essentially, what I have here is I found this bit of information about what characters have had the most screen time in all the seasons of Game of Thrones, and there have been 7 seasons. Season 8 coming out in April of 2019 will be its last season. And take a wild guess, dog. Who do you think has had the most screen time combined out of the cast without looking at the stream?
Well, I'm trying to turn my head over here, and you're saying out of all the seasons,
Yeah.
right? Who has
Mhm.
had the most screen time out of everybody? I'm going to go with hmm, just thinking of Sansa possibly. You know what? Tyrion Lannister is my guess here.
Yep, you are correct. Tyrion Lannister has had the most screen time out of any character in the show. And if you look at this kind of chart here, you kind of see the distribution amongst every single individual season as the top 10 characters who's had the most screen time. And season 1 was Ned Stark. Interesting, right? And then seasons 2 through 4, it was Tyrion. And season 5 became Cersei Lannister. Season 6, Jon Snow. And then season 7 is also Jon Snow. And, who knows what's going to happen in season 8 with only 6 characters. Another little bit of a trivia here is that there have been over 550 listed cast members since 2011 when the show first started. So that includes credited and uncredited roles, but doesn't include all the extras that have actually appeared. That's a lot of listed cast members for a TV show for 7 seasons. If you really think about it. And
Yeah, we had 550 characters to choose from.
yeah, yep. And in addition, but this is nothing. This is only a quarter of the actual books. I looked at it checked it up online today. In the books, there's like 2,103 characters or something like that listed in the books. So, I mean, we're only a quarter of the way in. If you thought the Game of Thrones show was complicated in terms of the number of characters, the books are just even crazier. You know.
Right. And think about this, right? I don't think the show's going to add any new characters this season, really. I mean, yeah, there might be one or two here, but I think they're kind of done introducing new things where we have two more books, coming up
Yeah.
where, there's probably even going to be more characters possibly. What do you
Yeah,
think about that?
yeah, yeah, and a lot of those characters are actually from I think from the World of Ice and Fire books, and even with Fire and Blood doesn't really introduce that many new characters because it's just more of an in-depth kind of story that that the World of Ice and Fire kind of introduced everybody to. in the beginning in more general terms. But, just in the World of Ice and Fire book, if you go back into the lore, I mean, there's like, 1,000 characters or even more listed in that book, accounting for the, over half of probably that 2,000 character number. So it's, yeah, there's a lot of people, a lot of characters in that whole series. But, say what you will, D&D has basically, introduced a lot of characters for all of us to enjoy on HBO. Wouldn't you say, Dawg?
Oh, that's I think that's my biggest thing my biggest factor of why I watch the show so much was the characters. And I think I've mentioned that a few times, like on some of my Star Wars rants and things of that nature, where I've talked about characters, story, sound and music, right? Or like probably my biggest four things as far as like making a great entertaining series or film, if you will, right? Yeah. And I think Game of Thrones hit it out of the park with their characters, whether they're protagonist or antagonist, if you will, also. Yeah. So I mean that was probably their strongest thing, was the way they had built the characters and things of that nature.
Yeah, and also the cool thing about the characters in Game of Thrones is that there are very few purely evil or purely good characters in this series, right? Most of the characters that you've seen on Game of Thrones tends to be very gray, and I'm just kind of thinking about like who's really in the light, in the show. Well, you probably got people like Davos and Sansa and Samwell Tarly, right? As people who are actually kind of truly good, but on the truly evil side, you really have people like maybe Ramsay Bolton and Euron Greyjoy, but everybody else is sort of like and maybe Cersei, but everybody else is pretty much gray if you really think about it, which makes it a really interesting kind of show with respect to character development.
And to take on that, if you will, like somebody like Davos, who's one of my favorite characters too. He was serving a king that was worshiping dark forces, and he basically smuggled over the murderer to King Renly too. So it kind of makes sometimes this character you kind of look at it as a gray factor too. So he's not 100% on the side of light, if you will. Yeah. Although he's definitely a good guy, right?
Yeah, he's definitely for sure. And maybe and Shireen also is probably a very good person. So I kind of for maybe very good people. So okay, so before we get started, guys, I guess we want to go over like what our criteria was for picking our top 5 favorite characters. And I'll let you start off and explain your criteria here.
Yeah, one of my one of my biggest factors was longevity, right? Have we seen this character from season 1 all the way through season 7? That was a big factor. So I think I might only have 1 or 2 that are possibly on my list that that have not been in every single season, if you will, right? Also, did this character have some super moment that made me really go, wow, I love this show, and this is the reason why I watch this show, is because of scenes like this, right? Does this character also make the other characters around him better, right? And that might be an actor too. The actor might even make the other characters around them better, if you will, too. So that was some of my and then also did this character intrigue me to where I can't wait to for the next episode to see this character again. I want to see what goes what happens in the story with the next episode. So that was probably my biggest factors there, Mel.
Yeah, and mine was like you were saying. I think what characters were really, really memorable to me. I mean, it didn't matter whether or not they were evil or good. It was just if I remembered what they were going to do, and I looked forward to them appearing on screen, was a big issue for me. And the level of intrigue that these characters had in terms of what they were going to do next was a major issue, factor for me. So looking through the list right here, we have completely different picks, so this is really going to be fun to discuss. So as usual, we have a top five, and then we have one honorable mention for each of us. And I will start with Dawg for his first honorable mention.
Okay, and yeah, my honorable mention tonight, folks, is the Hound Sandor Clegane. He's I think he's one of my most favorite characters in television history. When I come to think of it, right? I love his arc. How it started out, and by the time we get to F the King, how what's transpired, past that, and his wit, probably like right that might have been in the first episode actually where when he's talking with Tyrion and telling Tyrion about it's not hunting if you pay for it, right? So it was little things like that that made you go, wow, this big ruffian, killer, if you will, right? He still has some sort of human wit about him and humor and things of that nature that make you kind of like this character, right? His biggest blemish, right, to where we're like, okay, we were just recently talking about gray characters and things of that nature, right? He killed Micah, right? And folks can say what they will about, okay, well, he was ordered by the prince to do this or the king to do this or things of that nature. And, to point out, things that, Davos has said before, if you're, if your God, has you burning children or in this case, killing children, your king has you killing children, then your king is evil. And, you shouldn't be serving that king. There's no honor in that, although, when you think about this character, he's probably the truest knight, one of the truest knights that, doesn't really have a knighthood. So, we've seen him, and here's another character that I think he makes the other characters in his scenes more intriguing and fantastic to watch too. Like when in like season 1, I think season 2, we see a little bit more with him and Sansa, and then we get the great stuff with Arya, and then past that, now he's moved on with the Brotherhood Without Banners, and we pretty much seen fighter, broken man, and now he's coming back, and as Beric Dondarrion said, you're a fighter, this is your true calling. He's the Hound on the trail, going after the Night King now, and he's basically he's a fighter. And, so I think that's his true calling. And I'm really looking forward to, I think my favorite scene with him, I wrote down a couple notes here, and I'll stop. But, yeah, I think my favorite scene is like when he's with Arya and, she's doing her water dancing and he's like, hey, what's that shite, And, and he's like, show me something. Right. And then she like actually shows him something. And it kind of scared him to the point to where he just like backslaps her and tells her about things of like, armor and big effing swords. Right. And then by the end of it, though, he hands her the sword back. I thought that was probably like one of the coolest scenes. I thought I saw a little bit of the symbolism, but, of him, still handing her the sword and, kind of like the teacher and student, if you will. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Arya and the Hound reunite. So that's my honorable mention, Mil.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really great choice, because I think the Hound is one of those morally great characters that we were kind of discussing at first, before we actually went into this list. In the beginning, we thought he was kind of evil, right? He did kill that boy Micah, right, the butcher's boy. He was capable of a lot of cruel stuff, but as the seasons, continued, he actually evolved into kind of a character with a lot of redemption. He's trying to make up for his past deeds. So, he's still, he's still rough around the edges, but you can kind of tell that he is, fighting for the good side here against, the White Walkers. So, and the thing about the Hound, especially, the way the show has been written, what's great about him, is that every word and every sentence that comes out of his mouth is pure gold, right? I mean, it's just freaking hilarious, the stuff he says, and alluding to that scene with Arya. I mean, it's one of the funniest lines in the show, where he goes, ha ha ha, Arya's saying, yeah, I was taught by Sarah Farrell, the greatest, swordsman in the world. And where is he now? Oh, he died because all he had was a wooden stick, and he goes, oh, the greatest swordsman in the world without a sword. I thought that was great. That was a great scene. I bet his hair is greasier than Joffrey's, what, right? So, it was just things like this, which is just classic Hound stuff, and, he would really make a great spokesman for a KFC in the next couple of years, wouldn't you think?
Oh, absolutely. With the chicken scene, that's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just classic. I think that's probably one of my favorite scenes of all time on the show. So
Hmm.
yeah, if we were doing like favorite scenes of all time,
Yeah.
I bet you that would be up there when he was, I think I'll take two chickens now. So
Yeah.
and also a great point what you mentioned about where uh now he's trying to do right. We saw that when he buried
Yeah.
the farmer and his daughter, right?
Yeah.
In last season and things of that nature, right? Um, but yeah, I think his character it's having a nice full circle arc, if you will, and yeah, I mean it's going to probably end with a mountain. I think that's my kind of prediction.
Yeah.
But that was kind of foretold to us in season one, of course. So
Yeah, I mean, it's as if like like him and Jamie Lannister almost has these parallel arcs, in terms of how they evolved from season one as being total, kind of douchebags, and then they're trying to redeem themselves through the whole, through the evolution of the series, and now they're fighting together, against the White Walkers, for the good of Westeros, and I always found it kind of funny how like the Hound and Jamie are so appealing to people, even though that they did commit some pretty horrendous and horrible acts. But yet, everybody hates Caitlyn Stark because, she just made a few, mistakes in her life. So, she's just a victim of her own, of her own total genetics, as I would say, in terms of intellectual firepower. So, I think a lot of it has to do with the character and how, and the actor and how this person Rory McCann is actually portraying the Hound's character in the show that makes him so appealing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, great stuff there,
Yeah.
Mel. Yeah,
Hmm.
I totally agree. Yeah, what a great actor, and
Yeah.
yeah, one of my favorite characters of all time in television.
Hmm. Okay, now, so let's just go with my honorable mention, and that is no other than Carl Fucking Tanner, portrayed by you know, portrayed by the unforgettable Burt Gorman. Okay, everybody knows Carl Tanner, right? The legend from Gin Alley, the master of the double daggers. He's the one guy that came off my list when we were doing the top 5 Game of Thrones fighters of all time, because I would want this guy behind me, in a bar brawl, like in a pool hall in close quarters, because of his proficiency with daggers and fighting. And to me, okay, again, it's one of these things. He only appeared a couple of episodes, maybe 4 episodes in total, but I just remembered him. Okay, he didn't last the longest, but he was just so memorable by the way he was acting. He's probably like, to me, maybe the second or third best villain in the entire series. Lord Snow, come take me back for trial. And then you see that scene where he kills Jorah Mormont and basically drinks out of his skull. So I think that was awesome. I mean, Carl Fucking Tanner is a Fucking legend, and you can't argue with the fact that he is a legend, and he is totally unforgettable in my book, and one of my favorite villains in the show. He doesn't even appear in the books. I mean, he only appears in the show.
You know what? And that's a great point you make too, because this is really a filler villain, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what a great filler villain he was. And yeah, it's too bad they couldn't have tried to stretch, his story out a little bit more, and he could have been a nice arch nemesis to John, if you will,
Yeah.
for a time, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, he had a little bit more depth in the show than Ramsay Bolton did, honestly. And I mean, I think the Ramsay Bolton actor probably was a better actor, but in terms of depth of his villainry, I mean, Carl fucking Tanner is up there, in terms of just kind of how he acted, and nice watch trader, rapist, call him what you will. He just wanted to be free, like a wildling, like a wildlings. That's all I'll say. He just wanted to be free.
Right. Yeah, I'll never forget, him drinking out of the skull, and
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite, most intense scenes too. Is when Craster gets his.
Yeah.
That's just when those guys turn on Craster, and
Yep.
Yeah, when he sits there and calls Craster a bastard, and yeah, what a fantastic scene, and yeah, what a great like I said before, he's a great filler villain, and yeah, it's too bad we didn't get to see a little bit more of him.
Yeah, you think how do you think they cleaned Jorah Mormont's skull? I'm sure they didn't have any kind of like disinfectant, to clean it out with, So is that necessarily a kind of a hygienic way of drinking wine out of somebody's skull? Yeah, maybe they boiled off the flesh, like they did in the olden days, I guess. But
That's what I'm thinking, but I don't think he was probably too concerned. He's probably feeling like he could, drink whatever. So
yeah, stomach acid is very strong, so I'm sure it would have killed off a bunch of the germs and bacteria and other kind of pieces of brain that was left over, right?
Right.
All right. So anyway, I think we're going off tangent here. What are we doing? So now that the honorable mentions are out of the way, we are going into our top 5, and we're gonna start off with Dawg's number 5 pick, and it is.
Yeah, and my number 5 pick is Tyrion Lannister. So yeah, and again, one of my main factors, in this was like, have I been with this character since season 1 all the way through? And, I've seen Tyrion in season 1 all the way through season 7. And there's not a lot of story that I can think of where, I didn't, or a lot of scenes where Tyrion's in where I could just like, please throw this scene away. Maybe a little bit here with Shay, and, because I'm not too big into romance scenes and things of that nature, but I understand why it was needed. But there's not a lot of scenes that he's in where I didn't enjoy, right? And I think my favorite moment ever was when I had no idea what was coming and things of that nature when he was up in the sky cell, and he's he gets Maud, or is it Mord or Maud, right?
Yeah, Mord, or something like that, or
yeah.
Morg.
Like, let me talk to Liza or whatever, right? And you're like, what is he doing, right? And then he starts confessing and all this, it's all this nonsense. And but by the end of it, he's like, I demand a trial by combat, right? And you're going, what is? And so I had no idea what trial by combat was at the time, or things of that nature. So as a newbie into that realm, hearing that, and then but now I'm hearing it from this guy. I'm like, oh, this is intriguing. How does trial by combat work? And how did he just fool her into this? And I think that little moment in there was like one of my favorite Tyrion moments that made me go, wow, I really love this show. And this is one of the reasons I love watching the show, is because of characters like this, right? So, now we get to see him, trot off with Bronn and just get into, some other little awesome adventures too. The beginning, I think, the beginning was fine too. I would have liked to had a better scene other than him in a brothel in the beginning of it, but I think that's kind of how it was in the book too, if I remember right, but maybe not. That might not have been how it was in the book. I don't think so. But we got to see him with Jon, in the beginning there, up until up to the point to where he'd been captured by Caitlyn, and but then he's off with the Hill tribes on with Bronn, and he made all those characters better, around him too. The scenes with Varys, I love that stuff. Even the scenes with Jorah Mormont, Podrick and Bronn and Dany too. He makes Dany a stronger character too. So I think this character, yeah, he makes any and the scenes with him and Cersei are probably, I think, some of my favorite scenes of all time. Especially even in this last season when they were having their parlay at the end too. So I think his circle's going to come back to Cersei by the end of it. That's kind of my prediction with Tyrion. I don't think he's quite done. I think he's going to have another scene with Cersei by the time the series is over.
Yeah, Tyrion. Tyrion, I thought was a really, really, really good character from seasons like 1 through 4, because it kind of parallels his story from Game of Thrones to Clash of Kings, up until the Storms of Swords, where he's in his element, right? I mean, he's still part of his family, and he's involved in kind of like the politics and intrigue of King's Landing. And I thought he excelled in that role in the show, as well as being involved in that. He was basically trying to figure out what was going on. He was turning Littlefinger, Varys, and Pycelle, right? Up against each other, trying to figure out who had the loosest lips, I guess, of the small council, if you will. And and he was great in that scene. He spent his time trying to hide Shay away from his dad, right? Because then he got caught with a whore. He will get punished by his father for that. So the problem with him as a character in the show was that after he was exiled after his trial in season 4, he kind of became lost as a character, in my opinion. And because in the books, he doesn't even meet Daenerys yet, but in the show he's like the Hand the King now, and then you show him just totally screwing up, right? Last season, he devised this grand battle strategy that went nowhere, right? It's like I don't think he kind of thought it through at all, So, once upon a time in the earlier seasons, he was probably the smartest man in Westeros, or one of the smartest men in Westeros, and then it's almost as if he got progressively dumber, as the show went on. And maybe it was intentional. Maybe D&D knows a lot more than we do about how character development really should go in a show. But it's, to me, it was kind of what happened. What happened with this character.
I agree with you, because I think I'm not saying. I guess this last season, it wasn't one of my favorite seasons with them, although there are some pretty strong scenes with them in them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, those first 4 seasons are just like really super strong.
Yeah.
And, I think, after that, sometimes it's kind of 50-50 sometimes with some of the scenes. And,
yeah,
some of the stuff was also great, though, when he, like when he frees the dragons when he unchains the dragons down, but, some of the stuff leading up to it sometimes was,
yeah.
I think like when he was doing the joke scene with Missandei and Grey Worm, I was going, oh dear, what's
exactly.
Right
playing 20 questions with them. Yeah. It was like,
I'm like, what are you guys doing to my Tyrion, man? So it was things like that, but all in all, fantastic character. And, we've had him since season 1, of course, and he's, definitely, a high profile character, if you will. Right. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what he does. He drinks and knows things and jokes around with Grey Worm and Missandei in his spare time. So, yeah. But definitely on the strength of his first 4 seasons, yeah, for sure. He was a great character, and portrayed by a great actor, Peter Dinklage. He's probably, I think, he's like the only American in the main cast. I think everybody else is English, so or Norwegian if you count Hodor, I think. So anyway, go USA, go Tyrion. So my number 5 is the Night King. Okay, because non-spoken. Okay, he's but he's really fascinating to me, and I think he's gonna become a lot of people's favorites as the season winds down next season. Played by Richard Brake, so it's a cool name for an actor. Sounds like a stuntman name, but Richard Brake, whatever. But the Night King, he's the greatest enemy of Westeros, and to me, he's probably like the most fascinating character that we have in the show, because we know next to nothing about him, right? All we know in the show is that he was created by the children of the forest, basically sticking a piece of dragonglass into his heart, and boom, he transforms. But look at what this guy can do, right? He can raise the dead, create an army of whites. He can huck an ice bear 200 meters away, and basically kills a dragon with it. That's pretty cool. So he's Olympic level, javelin thrower, and he basically can ride a dragon. So, and basically bring down the wall, and not just any dragon, but a undead or reanimated dragon in the guise of Viserion. So I'm really looking forward to what this guy can do. I mean, he's already one of my favorite characters right now, but I'm really, really looking forward to what his story evolves into next season. Hopefully the show or the writers will actually write a little bit more of a backstory to him, maybe through Bran, and actually we get to figure out what his true motivation is as to why he's coming down south of the wall. And really, really fascinating character. There's still a lot of backstory to basically to be delved into in his character, but to me, he's number 5 on my list only because I think I just look forward to seeing him and seeing how his story unfolds. Dog. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Great pick here. On this is another fantastic. Here's a great villain that we have that doesn't even speak words, right? Yeah. But absolutely intimidating, right? This character can, if he defeats people in your army, he adds them to his own army, right? That's a pretty scary feature in his arsenal, right? So, if he decides to just take out half of your army, he's just going to add it to his own. So I think it's going to get pretty sick with what's coming in season 8. Just some of my own little predictions here. I think we might see a Dothraki white army, if you will, and the Unsullied trying to defend that, things of that nature, right? That's kind of what I was kind of thinking. And what a fantastic scene he had with the "Come At Me, Bro" scene with Jon Snow there in the Hardhome episode. My absolutely, that's my favorite episode in the whole entire series is, season 5, episode 8, his episode, if you will, really. So, and this is a dangerous character, right? He can one-shot a dragon right out of the sky. And, thank God that we have seen him actually miss, though. So, at least he can't just automatically hit. So, because, that's pretty scary that he can just, and you can take the other dragons out too. So it's going to be interesting. I think his whole purpose, though, is that we've seen with the Children of the Forest, is to kind of what my thoughts are on the Night King. What's his purpose? What's his primary goal? Things of that nature. Right. I think he's pretty much like Ultron that we've seen like in the Marvel comics and in the cinematic universe too. Right. Where basically this thing was created to protect, the folks that were under attack, right? The Children of the Forest, right? But Ultron or the Night King or whatever, he turns on both, right? Things of that nature, right? So he's like, you know what? In order to, to maintain order here, I'm going to, get rid of all this chaos and I'll just cover the world in ice. Kind of like Sauron in the Lord of the Rings, where he's going to, not necessarily those motivations per se, but how Sauron wants to cover the world in darkness. This guy just wants to cover the world in ice and just pretty much wipe out. He's pretty much programmed to wipe out everything and just cover it all in ice and leave a feast for the crows, if you will.
Yes, cool. So my pet hypothesis is that he's actually like a force of nature. I mean, he's basically coming down south of the wall to basically fight off the fire as represented by Daenerys Targaryen and her dragons, because without you can't have fire without ice, right? You can't have light without dark, right? Every side of a coin must have its opposite, an equal side. So I think that this is what we're after here. I think he basically represents the side of ice, essentially coming down to balance out the the forces of fire coming into Westeros, I think, and he's like Anakin Skywalker. He's bringing balance to the forest here a bit. So take that and stew on that, guys. So And again, I mean, I really don't know what his true motivation is, and hopefully we'll get something. Hopefully, the showrunners won't make him out to be, just some villainous, automaton who's essentially pure evil, because that would be a waste of this really, really cool character.
Right. Yeah. I hope we get to see him by, by the last episode. I hope he doesn't. My prediction kind of thing is that, he's kind of like a subplot, right? And like that's going to be finished with, and then there's going to be one other plot, that's going to be finished off, but, my hope actually is that, they let him linger on until the final episode, if you will.
Yep. Great.
And we can I want to see a little bit more of what he can do combat wise and things of that nature.
Yeah. You think there'll be a final showdown between him and Jon Snow, like Darth Vader versus Luke?
Yeah, one final trial by I think the show's going to end on a trial by combat.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead into our number 4 picks. And Dawg, your number 4 is.
Oh yeah, my number 4 pick, folks, is Arya Stark, and you know what? Here's another character again where we've seen her. Longevity was that hit totally right. We've seen her since season 1. She's got a lot of screen time. I think they maybe 50-50 on some seasons. They might have cut her out down a little bit. I haven't been as happy with what they did with her, maybe this last season. I didn't like kind of how, with the little little finger plot. That wasn't like one of my favorite things. So I thought, after all this time that we've seen her doing all these great things and stuff, right, and learning, how to be this, badass assassin and fighter and things of that nature, it's like that's all we got was her slitting Littlefinger's throat by the end of it, right, and just kind of tooling around, being Sansa's, kind of putting fear into Sansa and things of that nature. I'm ready to see her do a little more, if you will, right, and not watch Ed Sheeran singing and stuff like that, right. But back to why I fell in love with this character to begin with, right, was just her arc, from season 1 where we see her as pretty much this wild wolf, if you will, to kind of use the animals, and where there's this rage about her, like when we see the incident with Joffrey, and how she, how mad she gets at her sister for lying, and but she has no composure and things of that nature, right? But we've seen her go through, so much, from being at the scene where her father dies to going to Harrenhal, right, and that nasty area, and surviving that, to being Tywin Lannister's cupbearer, right, which is probably other than some of her scenes with the Hound, I think the scene with her as Tywin's cupbearer at Harrenhal, that's some of my favorite stuff, and I think it was kind of foreshadowing things that were to come, like when she was talking about Dark Sister and the dragons and what had happened at Harrenhal and stuff like that. So I'm really intrigued to see Arya meet with Dany, or encounter the dragons too, and possibly uncover the what happened to Dark Sister possibly too. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. But she's gone from she's got her butt whooped. She had an arc where, she wasn't like the best fighter and things of that nature, right? She was trying to get there, right? But she's probably one of the best assassins that the show has ever seen, or possibly, even the books at this point. She took out a whole entire house, right? And, in a few seconds, really, with the poisons and stuff like that, right? Before she was, they were just having her doing little, a lot of times they're just doing one hitters, if you will, right? And she just took out the whole entire house, and it was cool to watch them all go down.
Yeah.
And just making sure I didn't miss anything else from. Yeah, I like how she's a little bit more composed though now, and I'm definitely interested in seeing how I think her story's going to come full circle with I think it's going to come full circle with Cersei or like again when I was talking about Dany with the dragons and things of that nature. But Cersei's still on her list, so I think possibly she's heading that way, or she's just going to be Sansa's sword basically. So
Yeah, great choice here for number four, with Arya. No, in the first season when we first introduced to her, I thought she was great. I mean, she played that character to a T. She played the innocent yet willful kind of tomboy girl, right? That was very, 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 very much devoted to her family, which is really, really great. And to see her evolved into this faceless assassin was, was really fascinating, and, she's probably the most well-traveled of all the main characters in the show, right? I mean, she's been everywhere, you know, sorry, Winterfell, went to King's Landing, then back up through the Riverlands, right? Then she took a sharp right, eastward in the Bravos, and then back into the Riverlands and basically met up with Ed Sheeran, right? And, thank God he didn't sing Shape of You, to her or something like that, and, it's, yeah, I mean, she's definitely the most experienced and most worldly of all the Stark children. And it'll be really cool to see what happens to her once, when she meets back up with the King of the North, Jon Snow, her favorite sibling, as far as we know, and basically how she basically interacts with Daenerys, right? I mean, is she gonna like Daenerys? Is she gonna hate Daenerys? We don't know. Maybe she'll like Daenerys because she's a strong woman with a dragon, and or want to fly the dragon or something like that. Who knows who knows what's in her head? But I think her character has a lot more to be explored, and it's just too bad that I wouldn't have one more season to see what she can actually do. And
right
yeah,
now, did you see the little promo recently, Mel?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I was just getting on your point there because you kind
mhm,
of see that there might be a little rift there with Sansa
yeah,
and Daenerys coming. But yeah, I kind of felt that Sansa or Arya would kind of like Dany just
exactly.
because she seems like she's infatuated with the dragons,
Hmm.
and yeah, that's going to be a great.
Hmm.
There's a lot of reunions there with that. Also, the Hound. Also, I'm really interested in seeing her.
Hmm.
With John, of course, also. But the Hound, I think even more than John, I'm interested in seeing her reuniting with Sandor.
Yeah. So it'd be good stuff, and yeah, definitely worthy of a top five inclusion with Arya Stark. Hopefully, D&D will write out her character and have her go out, in a realistic way, And so, all right. So number four on my list is, okay. I can't use the references to the books, but number four is show Stannis Baratheon, played by the indomitable Stephen Delane, who also played Thomas Jefferson in the John Adams HBO series. Anyway, yeah, I mean, Stannis the
That was
Manus. What can we say?
fantastic, by the way.
Yes, Stannis the Manus. What can we say about this guy, right? Brother Robert and Renly, right? He's cold, serious, stubborn, rarely forgiving, but he's also brave, just, and honorable and duty bound. And the coolest thing about him, as him being depicted in the show, was that he was a pure grammar Nazi. Twice, somebody said, use the word less instead of fewer, and then he actually corrected them in the show. Like a scene was at the Night's Watch, right, where the one of the Night's Watchmen, I think it was Arthur Yalric, said, "Let them die, less enemies for us." And then you see Stannis going fewer. He said the same thing to Davos too, when Davos was just learning English. So he was Mr. Grammar Nazi, which made him a hero in my book in terms of the show. And again, he was just and honorable. And one of his great quotes was, a good act does not wash out the bad, nor a bad the good. So he was the guy that didn't believe, like, in the philosophy, basically the end justifies the means, sort of like a Tyrion Lannister. I mean, he actually cared about the means because that was part of his personality. Basically how you behaved, how you conducted yourself. Made sure it was with honor. And yeah, he was stern. He was serious, and he definitely wouldn't win any kind of Father of the Year awards for basically burning his own daughter at the stake. But he was trying to win a war. He was doing it for the greater good, and you can't blame him for that. I mean, and it was just that the show made him to be. I mean, the way he died and the way the show basically made him like basically kill his own daughter was so unlike that of how he's actually portrayed in the books. Because in the books, his character never ever kills his daughter, and just because of his personality. And this is one of the most egregious acts of character assassination that you actually see, of a character translated from a book to a show. So, but nevertheless, disregarding that kind of commentary, in the show, he still was really great and really, really well portrayed. So there you go, guys. Stannis the Manus Baratheon.
That's a great pick. And also, folks, the actor Stephen Delane, right, Mel?
Mm-hmm. Yep, Stephen Delane.
Yeah, I just recently saw. There's a film with I think it's Chris Pine in it, or one of those Chris guys or whatever. It's called The Outlaw King.
Yep, saw that. Yep.
Yeah, you saw that?
Yep.
Yeah, he plays like Edward the First in it, like or Edward the Longshanks. Yep. The Longshanks.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's almost kind of a semi sequel to Braveheart, I guess, sort of, but it had its moments. But there was a lot of character actors I saw from Game of Thrones in that film.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, get back to your character here. Yeah, this is a good one, a great pickup, and yeah, those are fantastic scenes, especially when and I'm 100 pages into Clash of Kings now, right? So I've met characters like Patchface and Book Stannis. Now I've met him a little bit, but I love how even on the show and the book they kind of put in there when when he's writing about Jaime Lannister, make sure you put Sir in front of his name, right? He's still a knight, right?
Yep.
And then the things about I never loved my brother Robert. He never loved me. Don't put that in there. It's a lie, right? And it was just the little details, the little subtleties, right?
Yeah.
Now D&D has said, they came out and said that that's the way it goes down in the books. That's the way that Shireen goes out, and until I guess we see that, we'll have to take them on their word for it, right? At that point, I just absolutely despise this character at that point, just for, looking back on it, up until that point, up until the point that where that thought was starting to turn in his head about actually committing that disgusting act, right? He was a great character to watch, and he's even got Davos correcting John on his grammar too at the Fewer.
Yep.
So.
yeah. So I mean, grammar Nazi. I mean, just for that kind of stuff, he is one of the Game of Thrones heroes. And I thought it was a pretty good touch for his character, and actually a very clever kind of way of portraying his kind of like his stern, character, right, and this very pedantic view of life. So anyway, it's I mean, love this guy even more in the books, but we're kind of constrained with the show, but he's still a good enough character, at least for me, to be in the top 5, even if he kind of fell under the auspices of Melisandre a little bit too easily in the show. But hey, what can you do when you have Melisandre in front of you, right? Doing what she does with men. So anyway, Stannis Baratheon. So we're in our top 3 now, and we are at Dawg's number 3. Go for it.
All right, and my number 3, folks, is look at that frickin' face right there, folks. Yeah, she's a little got her she's a little heated up, if you will, right? So fire and blood coming after you, right? So yes, I love Daenerys Targaryen, one of my favorites of all time. This is one of the reasons I still watch the show today. And I think I've mentioned this in the past, but the scene when she takes the Unsullied and starts just rattling off that High Valyrian language at that poor bastard that's about to just get burned alive, right? That's like one of my favorite scenes in the history of the show. That at that point I was like, you know what? I absolutely love this show. and I loved watching the Unsullied just absolutely, just stick all those guys, all the slavers and things of that nature, while she's just like, body by body, free everybody with a chain on them and stuff like that, and just smash all the masters. And yeah, that was freaking awesome, man. And I was just like, you know what, I love this show, and I don't care, if they just have a absolutely bad season, like something like 5 or something, right? I'm gonna finish watching the show no matter what. So I'm in it till the bloody end. And yeah, we've seen her arc, her longevity. I remember the first time, we'd met her, and I'm going, wow, this sucks to be her with a brother like that. And then, she gets, basically pimped out to Drogo, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she's gone from the point of just kind of being pimped out to the point of, she's freaking queen, man. She's got, an army of Unsullied her back, right? She's got all the Dothraki now, right? They all see the strength in her, and she didn't even need her dragons to get the Dothraki at her back, right? Because she's got that, superpower of, she can't be burned or whatever, right? But it's still a factor, right? And she keep, I think some of my most hated scenes with her are like stuff with her and Dario, some of that filler stuff, and yeah, some of the, yeah, I think most of the stuff with her and Dario was some of the stuff I was like, yeah, I wish they would just kind of throw that completely out. But for the most part, it's like I think she's like one of the, she's like the truest queen, even though she does kind of have a little bit of a temper. But I think she's, pretty much trying, she's pretty much the one that's the most compassionate for the people, that we've seen anyway. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how her arc ends here. I think it's going to end with the Night King, something with that. And trying to think of whatever, there was something else I wanted to mention about Danny on my notes here, but yeah, I think we've seen her also have an arc of, kind of, where she couldn't get control of her dragons too. And, now it's to the point of where Drogon freaking kneels to her, right? He's pretty much, oh, hey, you need a ride. This is the dragons actually bow down to her, right? And, most people, when they see a dragon and it starts roaring, they're going to bow down. I've seen her with, Drogon just, screaming right in her face, and she just stands there just stone faced. Whereas we saw her flinch the first time, and now she's gone from flinching to just stone faced with him, just rah, I'm pissed off, right? And so, yep.
Yep. Daenerys Targaryen. Yeah. So now it looks like Jon Snow is getting all the rides from her, huh? Haha.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, for the longest time, I always figured, always wondered like who actually wore like the worst wig, her or pre-season 6 Cersei Lannister, and I'm still unsure like who wears the worst wig, but probably it's probably Cersei, because Dany's wig is fire retardant, right? So which is a good thing in the show. I mean, I'm sure they spend lots of money on making it fireproof, versus then and basically cutting out the budget, for the direwolves. But hey, the thing about Daenerys Targaryen, she's really, really polarizing, right? Amongst kind of like the audience of Game of Thrones. You have this, one group who's really fanatical about her, because, she's pretty, she's a revolutionary, she represents female empowerment, blah, 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 right? You can go on. And then you have the other side who just can't stand her, because because, she was in the Marine for, 3 seasons straight doing nothing, or, she's Khaleesi or whatever. I always thought that there may be a little bit of a bias in a sense of not liking her, because maybe people don't necessarily like the way she's portrayed by Emilia Clarke. I mean, because Emilia Clarke isn't going to win any Oscar awards for Best Actress anytime soon in her career, but she plays it really woodenly, and I think maybe that's part of the reason why there's this negative bias towards Daenerys Targaryen. And a lot of people don't understand, don't really understand her plot lines in the books too, and a lot of people find her plot lines and her chapters in the books very boring because it's it's set in Essos for one thing. Not doesn't have anything to do with politics. It's really about her, basically freeing, slaves, being a revolutionary in Slaver's Bay, and maybe that's just not as interesting in the books, and that kind of translates into the show a little bit. Just kind of like negative bias. I mean, I have no issues of her actually being the top in anybody's top list because I can understand how she is so appealing. I mean, she's beautiful, right? She's smart. She's fiery, right? She's a leader, and I mean, she's a good character in the show. I mean, she is what she is in the show, and and she's one of the main leads, and she is the one probably going to be, taking down and confronting the Night King, with her dragons, with her forces of fire.
That's what I was thinking too, man. I think arguably, she's the main protagonist on the show, right?
Yeah.
Or definitely one of them. So.
Yeah. So great choice. Dawg's number 3, Daenerys Targaryen.
Thank you.
And my number 3 is none other than Joffrey Baratheon, okay, played by the great Jack Leeson. His only acting role, he doesn't want to ever act again, but to me, he was the best villain in the entire series. I mean, people might say Ramsay only because, he's so vicious, but Ramsay to me was a very one-dimensional villain. I mean, he was just a psychopath. He was just crazy. There was absolutely no depth to his character whatsoever. I mean, but Joffrey had it all. And people forget about Joffrey and how great of a villain he was, right? Because he's been dead since season 4, the start of season 4. Like, that's almost 4 years. But, who was he? He was the wicked boy king of the 7 kingdoms that everybody hated. The whole entire fan base hated. Nobody I ever talked to likes Joffrey as a person, right? I mean, the guy was cruel. He was hateful. He was cowardly. But somehow, his character in the show, combined all these traits, right, into a really unforgettable character. Okay, I mean, everybody's talking about Joffrey right now still and saying, how much of a douchebag he really was, and how everybody still hates him from now on because he was just portrayed as a character so darn well in the show. Okay, and in the books he's just the same level of douchebaggery in the show, but I mean he was great. I mean. And he's like I think he's like the only person in the show to have gone through 3 named swords, right? He actually had 3 named swords and basically lost them all when he died. So I thought that was pretty cool. But he was good with the crossbow, right? And he got some pretty good target practice in with Roz in that one really horrific scene in season 3. And to me, he's a great character. He fits my criteria of being very, very memorable, very, very unforgettable, and basically every time he was on screen, he made an impact. Which I loved. So, and everybody is mine to torment.
That's
especially
fantastic
Sansa.
Picture.
Yeah.
This one. Absolutely fantastic pick. I think he's the greatest schmuck in the history of television. So I'm trying to think of a scene that he was in that I was not watching that scene. Right. I mean, because sometimes, as you're watching the series or you're watching the seasons go through, there's a few characters here and there where you're just kind of like, I might turn my head and see what's going on with the ball game or something. Right. Or, things of that nature. Right. But here's a character where, you are definitely glued to the television to see what antics he's up to, what he's going to say to, here's a guy that pushed it with everybody. He didn't care who it was, even, up to the point to even Tywin Lannister. Right. Mm-hmm. And that was a no with like everybody. Everybody knew, you can poke everybody around here, but that's the one line right there that you don't poke. Right.
Yeah.
And that'll get you, sent home to, bed without supper.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, the king is tired now. Cersei, please, bring him up to his bedroom and Pycelle, give him some milk with the poppy, to make him relax, and.
He made him love to. He made it, so you love to hate him, right? The only thing I was disappointed in, Milt,
Yep.
You know, because I had read ahead and things of that nature a little bit
Mm-hmm.
before, and like when I read in the book how he was actually clawing out his throat,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see that on film or on the screen, you know, where he actually was tearing out his
Yeah.
own throat. I thought that would have made a little bit more, uh, you know, Oberyn-esque, if you will.
Yeah, I think they had to reserve some of the screen time for Cersei crying and wailing over his dead body for that to happen.
Yeah.
You know, so
I mean, they did it well though. It was a great, you know, it was a you know, a great last breath, if you will. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. Joffrey had a really boss death, unlike Stannis Baratheon. Unfortunately, we saw his death off screen, but yeah, Joffrey definitely had one of the best boss deaths of all time with the Strangler doing him in. So yeah, again, I just love the character, and the way he was portrayed by Jack Leeson was spot on.
yeah,
I mean, it's
just a
like,
schmuck.
yeah, he was a schmuck, and he had all these different facial expressions, that made him just look like such a douchebag. It was great.
They say my Uncle Stannis never smiles. I'll
Yeah,
give him a red smile. Right? It's just like just the
yeah,
way he says it, like just a complete schmuck.
yeah,
And then
and,
Stannis is just on him. You know, or are you gonna face him off yourself and
yeah,
calling him out?
and his total like attitude towards Sansa was great in the first couple of seasons, right? Where he just treated her like such, like such a bag of nothing, and then it was, it was cruel, it was horrible, and it was exceptionally done. Okay, the show made the perfect casting decision by casting Jack Leeson into this role. So yeah, Joffrey Baratheon, number 3. All right, guys, we are in our top 2 for each of us now. So we're getting down to the wire here. And numero dos for Dawg is.
And my number 2, folks, is Cersei Lannister, right? And this was favorite characters, right? So this could be out of those 550 that Milt mentioned earlier, right? And I think she's the greatest villain in the history of television. And I'm thinking of villains like, possibly like J.R. Ewing and, of ones that, coming to the top of my head right now. But yeah, I think Cersei Lannister is probably the greatest villain in the history of television. And not only that, I think she's the best actress, actor or actress on the show. Period. Out of all those 550 characters, Lena Headey was the best. Per capita scene, if you will, right, or screen time. I think she brought it the best out of all of them. And we've had some absolutely fantastic actors and roles played, things of that nature, right? But and look at, that's why I also chose this picture. I didn't choose the one where she's actually slugging the wine, because like if nobody had ever saw this show, right, just her facial expression here, right, you can just see how she looks like somebody that's like so proud of her daughter at a ballet or something, right? Just the little things that she can do with like a twinge of her lips, or the way she can just show so much disdain for someone with just the look in her eyes and things of that nature. Especially when I'm thinking of the way she'll look at Tyrion and just absolutely just show that absolute look of disdain, or even the smirk she does too. This character was so hated, and there was also that little twist to it, which makes it even more intriguing that, there was a time where we were like, this was a scene where, a lot of people were going, hey, all right, good job, Cersei here. Right. And, and what she did was an absolutely evil deed, of course. Right. But, at the same time, a lot of us were just like, who wasn't high-fiving their buddy, when the sub blew up, right? And she slugged that line back, right? But she's had a fantastic arc. I think things are going to end with, I did mention that with Tyrion earlier. I think that something's going to happen where they're going to meet one more time, possibly. I think there's going to be an arc left with Tyrion, and I'm basing that off of, and I'm going off of my memory here, is I'm thinking of her first scene in Winterfell, where I think her first line has something to do with Tyrion. Like, where is that little monster? Go find our brother, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then she also mentions about she mentions to Robert, we've been riding for over a month. Surely the dead can wait, right? And I think that's a big theme that she's obviously showing now with the dead can wait. We're not going to help the Starks out and things of that nature, right? But I think that's going to be her biggest downfall is either something with Tyrion and the dead waiting, if waiting on the dead, if you will, too, right? Just the little things I kind of caught in some of her lines, but I think she's, again, I think she's the best actress on the show, yeah, I'll miss her. I'll miss her when this show is over for sure. So this was definitely another a character on the show that every single scene that she's in, I'm watching the scene. There's not a lot of just complete throwaway scenes with her that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, she is probably the one. She is the best, if not the best, actor / actress in the whole show. I mean, if I had to pick my top three, it would be her, probably Alfie Allen who plays Theon, and probably Aidan Gillen who plays Littlefinger in terms of like the trifecta of the best actors and actresses in Game of Thrones. But I agree with you, Dog. I think she probably is the greatest actor out of those three, and thus of the show. And the more I look at her right now, I think she definitely has like the worst wig ever in cinematic in cinematic history. I don't know who wears the worse wig than what she had to deal with, pre-season 6. Because I think that thing was just a big stringy ball of yarn, that was mismatched with her eyebrows and her face, and it didn't look right at all. So that was a horrible wig, guys. And go wig shopping. Don't ask for a Cersei Lannister wig, please, people. But her character is great in the show, because it makes her out to be a bit smarter and a lot more cunning and clever in the show than she really is in the books. And I think Headley portrays that role very, very nicely. And because in the show, since the beginning, she always was pretty cunning and pretty clever, in general, and she's vicious too in this show. Her only redeeming qualities, like what Tyrion said, right? Basically her love for her children and her high cheekbones, and that's pretty much it. Because in all other aspects, she's pretty much a biatch, right? So
Right.
It's yeah, and it's great how she plays that. I think a lot of her character, and if you just kind of go deep down into her character in the show, I think a lot of it's a product of her being a Lannister, being a very, very prideful woman, but yet being humiliated by, Robert Baratheon, right? And his drinking and whoring ways. And, for somebody with that much pride to be embarrassed, humiliated, and trapped in a very unloving relationship, yeah, it's no wonder she acts like, the prototypical, woman scorned, if you will, who just hates everybody, and, but yeah, she plays it to a T. She's a great actress. She's, the main antagonist in King's Landing, after Joffrey, of course. And, it's just a really, really well done portrayal that she's done. Very, very nice adaptation, different, but still a very, very strong, character in the show.
Absolutely. Oh, that's the one thing I wanted to mention about you're talking about. Yeah, her love for her children, right? Like that's a big, thing that she's shown, right? But I think more than anything, even that her biggest love, and she's shown it, through this, the final season or the final last couple of seasons, right? Is her biggest love is power. Right. Her all along, that's what she always wanted, was to wear that crown.
Mm-hmm.
I think more even because like we see when Tommen dies, she really doesn't show any, she doesn't show the, half the grief of, what happened with, with Joffrey. And, I think, she was, she wasn't as, she was definitely devastated with Marcella, right. But not as much as with Joffrey, of course. Right. But
yeah.
Her biggest love always has been power. kind of like when the Hound tells Bronn, you love killing more than anything, right?
Yeah.
So kind of going back to that.
Yeah, and it's great that you mentioned her children, how they died, and her reactions, because I think this was intentional by the show writers, but it just shows her progression into her being what she is right now, which is basically pure power, pure evil, in some cases, in a way. I mean, she grieved a lot for Joffrey, right? Then with Marcella, she grieved also, but not as much. And then with Tommen, when Tommen died, I mean, she basically just looked at his body and goes, yeah, that's him, and walked away and basically went to exact her revenge on the Septa, right, who shamed her. That was it. I mean, there was hardly any grief when Tommen died. And I think this was intentional because it really does show the progression of her character in the show. And yeah, I mean, I think they focused on her as the antagonist, the main antagonist for the show in King's Landing here, by actually being that careful with how her character is, developing. So you have Cersei, the main antagonist in King's Landing. You have the Night King up north, right, the more mystical, if you will, antagonist. So,
right, and that's where that's where I'm kind of like split on. I'm going, who is if we were going to say out of this whole entire series, who is the main antagonist?
Yeah.
And that's where I'm kind of thinking, I think it's her.
Yeah.
I do kind of think it's her. I kind of think the Night King's going to meet his demise or something, if you will, or, and then there's going to be something where they got to take down Cersei. But I might be wrong on that, but but that was kind of my, if the Night King isn't the main antagonist, I think it's definitely her.
Yeah. And I mean, I may be in kind of a minority opinion here, but the way she's behaving right now is actually a pretty good strategic move in terms of not helping the North, fight off the others. Let those guys. I mean, she's making a pretty sound military sense here in terms of letting those guys fight it out. And basically the North's going to lose a bunch of people. The Night King, will probably lose a bunch of whites. Maybe they'll get reanimated. Who knows? But it gives her time to actually sit in King's Landing and reinforce, basically build up her forces again. And if they do actually come that far south, then take them on, And plus you'll have the help of, the Greyjoys, and also have the help of, basic sellswords from the Golden Company, supposedly coming in from Essos. So, I mean, she is, in a sense, with her strategy, she is wiping out one of her enemies, which is sound military strategy in a way. So, all right. So, Dawg has Cersei for number 2, and my number 2, good old Tyrion Lannister, the old lion, played by Charles Dance. And I love this guy. I love him in the books. I love him. I loved him a lot more in the show, just the way he was portrayed. I mean, he was great. I mean, come on. Who doesn't like Tywin, right? The Lord of Casterly Rock and the Hand of the King, okay? He's probably the best political strategist ever, okay? And also, and what made him so formidable, okay, was that he was a political strategist who was very, very cunning and intelligent, but he also had a big, humongous army behind him, too. So, I mean, he basically had his way in Westeros, with his economic power and with his military might. And he basically controlled the whole continent, if you think about it. I mean, he was the kingmaker in a sense. And, like all Lannisters, okay, he's really, really misunderstood, right? I mean, everybody says, yeah, he doesn't have any honor, he lied to the Starks and he killed him at a wedding, blah, 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 blah. But, to me, I think he was he was very honorable. I mean, he was a man to his word. He always kept his word. Okay. And he was smart enough to just not act that way all the time. He'll only keep his word when he tells you he keeps his word. Okay. And, and shame on you if, you expect him, you basically, if you expect him to basically keep his word without him actually telling you, that, his word is good. Anyway, but the thing is, he's stern, cruel, and opportunistic because he had to be, okay? Because all he cared about was the legacy of his family. So he was truly devoted to his family and his family name. And, I see a lot of people complain about, yeah, he killed a bunch of Starks at a wedding and a bunch of their, bannermen, and that was really, really dishonorable. But the thing is, and he had this great line from the show, explain to me why it is more noble to kill 10,000 men in a battle than just a dozen at dinner. I mean, he's actually saving a lot of lives here by doing so. You know, it's there are ways to be very, very efficient with your time and your resources, and and I think this is one of those things that basically a person in his position who has kind of a grasp on reality should do is basically basically value the life of a greater population versus the lives of just a few. It's for the greater good, if you will, is a kind of a philosophy. And in this case, he's kind of different than Stannis Baratheon. In the Stannis Baratheon quote, in his philosophy was essentially, basically the ends don't justify the means. I think Tywin's case, the ends definitely do justify the means in most cases. So, anyway, I mean, he's a very complicated character, but he was great. He was great in the way he was portrayed by Charles Dance, who's a really, really great actor. And yeah, I mean, in a way, I mean, he was just so awesome in his focus too. Remember that one scene in season 1 where he's talking to Jaime, talking about strategies of war while he's skinning a deer? I mean, that's awesome to have that much concentration, that much focus, to basically be skinning a deer while talking strategy with your son in terms of how to defeat Robb Stark. I don't know. Love this character. I love Tywin. And, people might say he's evil. I say, no, he's not evil. He does what needs to be done. And actually with the least effort and the most efficiency as possible. That's Tyrion Lannister for everybody.
That's a fantastic pick here. Just and again, this is another reason why I watch this show is characters like this, folks. And this one starts out with a quite a big introduction from Ned Stark, if you will, right? We get we just kind of hear we've heard his name possibly a few times, but when Ned's pretty much calling for him to answer for the crimes of his bannermen and things of that nature, right? Mm-hmm. And now Littlefinger is like, whoa, maybe not this guy, right?
Yeah.
And first thing we see is him butchering a stag, right? How symbolic is that, right?
Yep.
And then and now because we'd seen this cocky Jaime Lannister for a bit, right? And now we're seeing the guy that kind of puts him in his place a little bit, right? And and tells him about his why wasn't Ned Stark dead and things of that nature, and his little code and things of that nature, right? And Tywin's putting him in his place. He's putting Cersei in her place. He puts Tyrion in his place several times, of course, but he's the one line that you don't want to poke, as I said earlier, right?
Yeah. And yeah, and I mean Tywin basically put everybody who crossed him in their places, okay? Because really, you can't argue with this guy because he's all reason and he's a very objective person. I mean, everything he says makes sense. Okay, I mean he may go about it in a very unsympathetic manner, and doesn't care about people's feelings, but that's him, and that's his pride. He was humiliated, in his younger days because his dad was basically humiliated by his bannermen. So he had to take care of business. He wanted to restore his family's honor and pride, and power and wealth. So, everything he did was for his family. And, and as a line, right, he's proud, very prideful, and he doesn't want to be messed with. I mean, right. Very, very intelligent person.
It had me thinking of back to, how you're talking about, the things that he had done for his family, right? Because I think his father was kind of being pushed over, right?
Yeah. The laughing line.
I kind of know a little bit about the backstory, right? Of, why the song is, the song and things of that nature, right? But I was thinking about the Arya scene when she was asking about, hey, did you know your father and stuff like that? And as he's talking about, his father was a compassionate man and things of that nature and blah, blah, blah. And, next minute he's like, I feel cold. Right. Yeah. And it's like, he was like brought back to the dark heart that he is. Right.
Yeah.
And, things of that nature. But I used to see a little bit of symbolism and stuff like that. And this was another actor that made the other actors around him stronger too, I thought too. He made the other characters stronger and just, there wasn't a lot of, I can't think of one Tywin Lannister scene that I was not glued to.
Yep. Yep. I mean, it's why he's so high on at least my list is because yeah, I mean he was very impactful. And every scene he had, scene that he was in had a purpose and was very impactful for the future kind of flow of the actual episode and the show. And
Yeah.
yeah, and you're dead on in terms of how he made the actors around him so much better. I mean, think about his scene with Arya, right, in season 2 at Harrenhal. I mean, those were fabulous scenes and interaction between her and Arya Stark. Between him and Arya Stark. Where she was playing his cupbearer in Harrenhal, and it was just like, it was great. It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, man, if they weren't absolute mortal enemies,
Yeah.
they probably would have gotten along really well,
Oh yeah.
actually.
Yeah. I think Tywin actually had a fondness for Arya. And it would have been really interesting to see what would have happened if Littlefinger actually did recognize Arya and actually told Tywin that, hey, that cupbearer is Arya Stark. Wouldn't that have been something?
Oh, that would have been absolutely crazy at that point, right?
Yeah, yeah, that would have been nuts. With the Lannisters holding both Stark daughters, maybe Robb Stark would call a truce and say, "Okay, okay, you win, dude. You win," and then there wouldn't be a red wedding, And if yeah. Otherwise, I'll kill them. So yeah, he's great.
But yeah, absolutely fantastic choice here.
All right, guys, we are at numero uno.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and Dawg, you have the floor for your number one pick.
My number one, folks, is the King in the North, Luke Skywalker. So yeah, my favorites, Jon Snow, folks, who I think is the Luke Skywalker of the entire television series. So I know I mentioned Danny possibly earlier. We were talking main protagonist in the series, and my thing is if Jon Snow's not the main protagonist in the series, then Danny must be. So, but I think it's pretty much Jon is he's the Luke Skywalker of our series, and yeah, we've seen longevity, of course, was a factor. Jon's been in the since season 1 all the way through to season 7, right? We've had him we've seen him like that Luke Skywalker farm boy, if you will, on Tatooine at first, right? But then he goes and he joins the Night's Watch and gets in a lot of adventures and things of that nature. By the time we find out that his true lineage is, he should be the one that's sitting on the Iron Throne right now, right? But not only that, we mentioned this last night in Justin's stream. I brought that, Justin brought that up, and I was going to bring that up, was that not only is he the true rightful king, his actions have also shown that too, right? He's actually earned his right to the throne through his actions, like absolute complete opposite of Joffrey, right? This character should have been pampered like a king, right? And it wasn't like that for him, right? So he actually had to kind of earn his spot at the table, and he's done that through his actions. And eventually, they're going to find out that he's the one that's going to have to take down the Night King and have that final trial by combat. I think we might see with him and the Night King. So, yeah, just for, I think he's another character that I can't think of a lot of scenes that Jon's in where, yeah, he might not be the most exciting character, because he's always kind of brooding, if you will, but I can't say that his scenes aren't intriguing. That's for sure. Right. We find out about, that his first scenes in Winterfell, I want to get back to real quickly when Catelyn looks at him, right? I think he's one of the first Starks that actually says a word in the, in that scene as well, right? And Catelyn's look at him and things of that nature. We know that, oh, this must be the most important character, out of all these people, right, that we've met, because they're trying to shun him away, right? So, there's something about Jon, there's something about his mother, right? That he has when he talks with Ned, about, hey, the next time we we meet, I'll tell you about your mother, I promise, right? So, kind of from then on, we got a nice scene with him and Tyrion a little bit, right? We see him grow some relationships with his Night's Watch buddies like Sam and Ed and Pippin and things of that nature, to the point of where he's, that lowly farm boy on Tatooine to where he's become a Jedi Knight now, right? And eventually he loses his hand, kind of like Luke, getting killed, but they bring him back, right? And it's Return of the Jon Snow. And he's taken down. He's become Leroy Jenkins at times, but he's the king in the North. And he's my favorite character on the whole entire show. I'm trying to think of my most favorite scene. You know what? My favorite scene. Actually, I got kind of two parts to this. Right, is him and 1-1, because I think that little, when he went back and talked to the wildlings about trying to help out with the Battle of the Bastards. When 1-1 stands up, and when you really think about this, 1-1 is he's the last living giant, right? Out of all the giants that have ever been, allegedly, right? 1-1's it. And he says snow out of all the other people in this realm, right? The giant, the last living giant, even out of all his wildling buddies, right? He says snow. I'm going to follow this guy, right? Mm-hmm. And he's the truest knight, the truest king. He's my favorite. He's my Luke Skywalker of the TV series.
Yeah, he's great. And in fact, in some ways, he actually outdid Luke Skywalker. Whereas Luke Skywalker only stole a couple of kisses from a family member, from Leia, right? I mean, he went to full Monty and actually had sex with one of his family members. So kudos to you, John Skywalker, for being who you are. But nevertheless, he's a great character. I mean, he's the main protagonist of the whole show. I mean, you might say that Tyrion's the protagonist, but I think he's more of a supporting character than a natural real protagonist. But and he also has the power of plot armor. He's not gonna die. He'll never die. He's gonna survive the whole show because he's Jon Snow. Or if he does go out, he'll die and be reincarnated as some natural force who's all powerful or something like that lives north of the wall. Who knows what he's gonna end up like? But but he won't die forever because hell, he is Jon Snow. And he's great too. I mean, like they really focused a lot on his character development in the show, because I think after Tyrion, I think he does have the most kind of screen time. If you add up all the total amount of minutes for all seasons, and because he is the main character, and I like Jon Snow, and it was really good to see his evolution, right? I mean, he was the farm boy, his aunt or his mother or stepmother, whatever you want to call Caitlin Stark, hated him. And, just like Luke, Uncle Owen hated him. He goes out, joins the Rebel Alliance, and Jon Snow goes out and joins the Night Watch. I mean, it's a perfect parallel. The only thing now is,
I was hoping you'd see that, Mel.
Yeah. The only thing now is that, Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker fights Darth Vader, and Jon's probably going to go one-on-one with the Night King, who's going to be his father. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Rhaegar basically reincarnated as the Night King. There you go. That's speculation for you. And
and this guy, Jon knows about caves too.
Yeah. And I mean, he's a great character though. I mean, I think Kit Harington does a really, really good job. So yeah, I mean, well, what more can I say about Jon Snow? He's the hero, right?
Right. And I can't think of any scenes that I just that he's in that I just throw away. I'm trying to think of something that, even I think the last season, I mean, it was kind of important because it led into when he parlayed there with Theon. But when he was just kind of walking down and Davos corrects him on his language and stuff like that. That was even a great scene, right? When he was fewer, right?
Yeah.
But it pretty much we could kind of tell it was kind of a filler scene, mm-hmm. right? Danny's off doing this, but we have Jon Snow in this episode, so we need to have a scene. So let's have him walk down the steps and talk to Missandei and things of that nature, right? Yeah. But they still made it pretty intriguing to watch and stuff. So But
Yeah.
I can't think of one scene that John's in that I, didn't like enjoy or something.
Yeah.
Maybe other than, when he was getting stabbed and stuff. But
Hmm. And even the stabbing scene was pretty cool. I mean, even if Ollie was there for no really particular good reason, for have a kid to have a kid in the show stabbing somebody. But hey, yeah, I mean, honestly, when it comes up, when it basically at the end of the day, the show revolves on two characters, right? Danny and John.
I think
At the
so
end of the day,
too.
so
Possibly Bran, maybe, possibly.
yeah, and yeah,
But
John's the hero, right? We all know that, and everybody loves the hero.
except for the haters.
Yep. And I think you can probably include me as one of those haters because my number one is none other than Malco.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
you guys remember Malco, right? I mean, played by the indomitable Adewale Akinnuoye Agbaje. Okay, he's a slaver from Summer Islands, and basically he's the owner, okay, of the best line in the entire show. He only appeared in one episode, but it was a really, really memorable one, right? The dwarf lives until we find a cock merchant. How can he beat that line? Okay, I mean, you can't. I mean, he is the most memorable character in the entire freaking series. Okay, by far, and the cool thing about this character was that he actually co-starred with Jon Snow, Kit Harington, in the TV series Pompeii. You can see in the bottom right left-hand corner there where they both played gladiators. So, so he has the credentials, and he had the acting chops to be the best favorite character of all Game of Thrones in the show. But you know what? It really isn't Malcolm at all. In fact, my number one character is none other than Pattaya Littlefinger Baelish. Okay. Okay. No, I was saying, you had the top three actors in the show. Well, he's portrayed by Aidan Gillen, who's actually, I think a great actor. And you never see this guy like any of the Fire and Con or any kind of the San Diego Comic Con conventions, because I think he's kind of a reserved person. But he's great. I mean, Peter Baelish is probably the smartest, most intelligent, and clever character in the entire show. Okay, and probably even the books too. I mean, he was the mastermind of the War of the Five Kings, right? I mean, he wasn't a political strategist, right? I mean, he didn't think 30 or 20 40 moves ahead of everybody else, like a Tywin would, or like a Tyrion would, or even like a Varys would. Okay, I mean, what his gift was all about political improvisation, right? What he wanted to do was basically sow a bunch of chaos, stir up a bunch of shit, right, and then take advantage of it. The pure, opportunistic, play, if you will. And from that, he can actually gain power. And a lot of that stuff happens to come from his roots, right? I mean, he was a son of a kind of like a lesser lord and from the Fingers. They weren't well off, and basically he wasn't born into wealth. He was basically he was warded off to the Tullys, and that's where he kind of practiced his practiced his skills and gained a lot of his skills in terms of dealing with noblemen and noblewomen and southern politics, being a ward of a great house. And yeah, I mean, I love this guy. I mean, he did everything. He just stirred up shit. Again, master of political improvisation. You can't beat this guy. And the only reason why he died, he had one little drawback, right? He was in love with a certain redheaded teenager, of his old crush, Catelyn Stark, and that did him in. But besides that, I mean, there's no telling what he could have done, with all the chaos that that could happen with the Night King coming down. Maybe he might figure out a way to take advantage of that. We don't know, but George R. R. Martin actually has a really good quote about him. Basically, he said everybody trusts him because he seems powerless and he's really, really friendly and he's really, really helpful. But behind the scenes, he's not that way at all, right? I mean, things are just stirring in the back of his mind. He's trying to figure out ways to take advantage of people, try to figure out ways of basically assessing a situation, basically destroying that situation, basically creating chaos of the order of a certain situation and taking advantage of it. And, he had and this actor played, Littlefinger to a T. I mean, look at that smirk. I mean, nobody had a better smirk than Littlefinger in the show, because you know that he knew, even though you didn't think he was much of anything, he ended up knowing a lot more than anybody else knew. And one of his quotes: "What we don't know is what usually gets us killed." And how true is that? He was the master of information. Second to Varys, of course, but he knew the value of information a lot, and basically used that to basically gain the advantage. That's my guy. Peter.
Oh yeah, that's an absolutely fantastic pick here. No arguments from me, my friend. Yeah, he had an absolutely fantastic list there, and I think I think he was probably, I think, the funniest character I had read in like a long time. Like when I was reading the first book, and yeah, I just remember him. He was one of my favorite characters in the first Game of Thrones book. He just had me cracking up the whole entire about just about every one of his scenes in the book, of course, too, even on the show too. So yeah, he was definitely an intriguing character, especially like I think it really started winding up when when he starts telling us a story about the Hound and the mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that. And yeah, the only issue I had, and of course it's not, pardon me, folks. Of course it's not his fault, right? It was his ending. I thought, I was kind of thinking that this was, kind of a chess game being played by Varys and Baelish. And that's kind of what I thought they were kind of leading into, is like, this side's on the white and this side's on the black, pieces, right? And I thought it was going to basically be Varys versus Littlefinger by the end of it, but didn't kind of turn out that way. I thought he could have had a better ending.
Yeah.
But other than that, all the way up through then, right? There wasn't a lot of Littlefinger scenes where I was not intrigued to watch, or you want to hear what he had to say or what he was scheming and things of that nature. So fantastic pitch, fantastic pick here, Milt.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think once they took Littlefinger out of his element in King's Landing and dealing with the politics and the political intrigue and the goings on, in King's Landing. I mean, he kind of lost a little bit of his flair, if you will, right? I mean, basically riding around aimlessly in the Vale. I mean, he was pretty good in the Vale, right? When he married Liza and basically threw her out the moon door. I mean, I thought it was pretty cool, And basically, he was trying to, basically manipulate Robin Arryn, or Sweet Robin, for you guys, to basically give him his army, and which he actually did, right, to help Sansa and Jon, at the Battle of the Bastards. So he was still playing a little bit of political game, but he wasn't sowing as much chaos as he could have. And yeah, I mean, that last season was pretty weak in terms of his character, because you really had no idea why he was there to begin with. I mean, was he trying to sow chaos between the sisters? Well, that's the company line, right? Between the Stark sisters.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mel, but just as Kerry McDonald has pointed out, right? He started the whole freaking thing, right?
Yeah.
And you mean to tell me that this fantastic plot that this guy devised, right, out of all this time, right?
Yeah.
He ends up like getting caught, starting a plot between two sisters.
Yeah.
That was it. That's how he got caught.
Yeah.
It's something that's kind of it seemed a little bit minuscule compared to the things that he had done and got away with, sort of, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it was part of his plan, though, because he started the War of the Five Kings, and after that, he took over the Lord Paramount of the Riverlands, right? He got the seat of Harrenhal. Basically, was named the Lord Paramount of the Riverlands. Then he went to the Vale, married Liza Arryn, and basically became the regent of Sweet Robin. So now he has the Vale of Arryn in his pockets. That's two of the like the seven major realms. And then he's go up north, right, and basically try to take over the north. And if he could have done that, he would have held in his pocket three of the seven realms, okay, of Westeros, which is pretty darn good for being a guy from the Fingers with actually no army. You really think about it, right? Besides what he borrows from Sweet Robin, he didn't even have an army to begin with. But the way he actually got to that point was basically through pure manipulation, pure political improvisation, pure scheming, and basically sowing a lot of chaos and knowing knowing which boxes to tick and who to actually manipulate. But in terms of what happened last season, Winterfell, the show didn't really do him justice as to what he was really doing there. Because I mean, sowing the seeds of discontent between Arya and Sansa. I'm not sure how he would take an advantage of that. Okay, so if Sansa killed Arya, would Sansa then have followed everything that Littlefinger said? No, probably not, because Sansa already knew not to trust Littlefinger to begin with. So Littlefinger couldn't have manipulated Sansa even if they killed Arya. So I just don't know what happened, and it's a shame that he died a loser's death, right? I mean, he didn't even get.
I think the scene, like with when she's training with Brienne.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to show us that, he sees that Arya's, badass, right, and she could be a threat to him, right? So he's thinking, okay, if I gotta get rid of Arya, because now I can just deal with Sansa.
Yeah,
right?
but
just kind of control her, right?
Exactly, yeah. But Sansa she wouldn't have allowed herself to be manipulated, but she already knew beforehand not to trust him.
Right. That's the thing. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I wish they would have came up with something a little bit better for his end game. I would have liked to seen him see a bunch of White Walkers and the supernatural stuff too, right?
Yeah,
that would have been kind of cool to see him encounter that kind of stuff.
Or maybe go back to King's Landing and actually stir up some stuff with Cersei and Euron Greyjoy. That would have been classic to see him and Euron get it on, right? And actually see if Euron would actually be able to play in any of his games, any of Littlefinger's games. And but it didn't end that way. Instead, he died a loser's death, right? He didn't even get a trial, for Christ's sake, right? Because that's the way to do it in the North. Evidently, lynchings are okay. Or in this case, basically having an assassin slice your throat while you're begging for your life is an okay thing. So if you want legalized lynchings, go up to the North. That's all I'm going to say. So, yeah, anyway, poor guy, but still my favorite character and a great character. And that's why I have him #1, only because he was just so intelligent and clever.
Yeah, absolutely. Great actor, too. I just was sitting there thinking, Bohemian Rhapsody. I think he plays a little role in that film that just came out about the Queen movie.
Yeah.
So I think he was in that.
Great. Cool. I mean, I haven't watched it yet, but I know it's been in the charts for almost 3 months now, right?
Right.
15 weeks or 16 weeks or whatever.
I'm pretty sure it was in that film. It might be. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we're done with our list, and we'll just go ahead and do a quickie recap of what of our lists. And go ahead, Dawg. You're first.
Oh, yep. And again, folks, my #1 was Jon Snow, a.k.a. Luke Skywalker, and his Darth Vader, if you will. At #2 is, I think, the greatest actor on the in the series is Lena Headey there as Cersei Lannister. My #3 was Fire and Blood with Daenerys Targaryen there, folks. And #4 there we have Arya Stark, and the man that drinks and knows things, Tyrion Lannister at #5. And my honorable mention was the Hound, Sandor Clegane. And I love Game of Thrones.
And for my list, okay, so honorable mention was none other than Carl Fucking Tanner, the legend from Gin Alley. 5 was the Night King. 4 is Stannis the Manus Baratheon. 3 is King Joffrey Baratheon. 2 is the old lion Tywin Lannister, and #1, Littlefinger, Pattaya Baelish. And guys, that is a wrap. So thanks everybody for coming in today and sharing, for letting us share our thoughts with you guys. And we had a really, really fun time and great comments from the chat. Sorry we didn't have enough time to actually read everything. But I know there's a lot of good discussion going on in there. So, kudos to everybody for dropping in there and basically showing their support. Dawg, any final words? And after that, tell us what you're up to in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, again, I just wanted to say thanks again, Milt, for having me. It's always fun to talk Game of Thrones and be with this great community as well. Yeah, again, thanks for coming out here tonight and watching us, folks. We'll be back next week on my channel. Yeah, we were discussing that a little bit prior to what our topic's going to be, but I think we're pretty close on that right now. So please look forward to that next Sunday, and probably after football again. It'd probably be a good way to go. So, that's what's going to happen there. So, yeah, coming up on my channel, we'll do some box office news soon, and as well as I'm going to finish the Batman Arkham Asylum game here shortly as well.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Dawg, for being here. And again, always a pleasure to have you on. As well as for me, what's coming up? Well, I won't be doing any kind of trivia next week. Instead, this upcoming Friday, Ben, Felicia, and Bran, the builder, are going to be hosting a stream and doing something. I'm not sure what the theme is, but I'm sure it'll be fun. So please stop by and check out Citadel Trivia. I should be back the following week afterwards for another round Jeopardy. And stay tuned for a 100th celebratory video that I'm going to put on. Okay, it's not going to be a stream where I'm going to get a bunch of people and basically backslap everybody. No. This is going to be, I'm working with somebody, a known creator in terms of building up a video and actually doing a really fun video and having a great time at it. So look out for that. It should be coming up in the next week or two. And I'm also going to throw out another premiere video on some kind of science thing, but more related to Westworld now. And after that, look out for me in doing more streams with Dawg on his channel next week. We haven't decided on topic yet, but we will be working feverishly and thinking of a great topic to talk about. And yeah, and go trivia. So thanks a lot again, everybody, for coming out there. Who do you have on the chat, Dawg, if you can see it? Because
oh, absolutely. You got some shout outs here, folks. Yeah, again, thanks for coming out here tonight, folks. Fandom D Saint, Kerry McDonald, Living My Rhapsody, Sly the Tank Benjen from the Drinks and Those Things pod, Kerry McDonald, Peter Griffin, Game of Theories with Marie. Thanks for coming out here tonight, Marie. I know Nancy T was here too. I think AU Pack Mule was here earlier. Andrew Saunders, thank you very much for being here. I think I mentioned Peter Griffin. I'm scrolling up here. House Sanchez, thanks for being here. Mary B was here. Bobby Catalano, thank you so much. Who else? Chrissy of Old Stones, thank you very much for being here too. Rhodes Rants on Star Wars. OTDA, thanks so much. Again, folks, you'll see us next Sunday on the Dawg Show. Probably a little bit after football, so that's what's going on there. Let's see if I missed anybody else. If I missed you, say something now, folks, and I'll get down here. I think that's about it. If I missed you, say, hey, Dawg, why'd you miss me? I wasn't doing it intentionally.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a few couple of hamsters that are moving around up here, so
yeah. And if we do miss you, it's not intentional. It's just that you came in too early, and we can't scroll up that far.
It happens sometimes. So, but again, thanks so much for the support, folks. And yeah, I have a blast doing these. I think Milt has a lot of fun doing them too. And yeah, we'll keep doing them.
Yeah, and so anyway, thanks a lot, guys, again for coming out. Thanks for listening to us. And we will see you next week on Dawg's channel with another installment of our top fives. See you guys later. Thanks. Bye.